All the challenges and changes in the current management of supply chains require true leadership. Understanding of the environment, main trends, and their development that drive changes in the industry is essential for sound decision-making concerning strategic investments in architecture of operational solutions. Organizational leadership has to understand new technologies and their optimal use as well as their limitations to be able to employ them effectively. Leaders within organizations needs to set priorities in protection of assets. Should it be facilities, relations, or production, define nature of relationships with other entities, including clients, employees, and contractors, and define performance indicators and priority information requirements. Organizational priorities are usually driven by efforts to avoid known consequence. To this end, they assign responsibilities to functional association and compartment controls according to geographical location in functional and expert silos. Leadership has to actively maintain awareness of own vulnerabilities and threats that can act upon existing vulnerabilities, and define priorities in managing risks for their organization. Pharmaceutical industry is driven by compliance. Compliance, however, cannot be the only driver of organizational changes and self-improvement efforts. Management of risks needs to go beyond compliance to prevent loss of litigation, denial of market access, consumer rejection, loss of intellectual property, and other potentially catastrophic consequences. Holistic assessment of vulnerabilities and threats, gaps in awareness, and linkage is essential for effective management of risks. Issue in opportunities and improvement of organizational effectiveness, resilience, and agility. Vulnerabilities within pharmaceutical supply chain affect stakeholders in different ways, depending on their position within the system. Enterprises, especially those operating globally, have to worry about internal and external interdependencies in all jurisdictions within which they operate, sole source supply chain to the extent of their obligations to their customers, and personal turbulences that affect operations continuum, including management of access rights and privileges. Over-specialization is a concern for enterprises that extensively rely on lean operations and do not invest in sufficient staffing and cross-training. Single point of failure without sufficient backup creates significant risks for enterprises. Increasing complexity of supply chains increases chances of failure that may affect other parts of the system. Information management should be currently the highest priority in pharmaceutical supply chain. Collection, processing, effective sharing, and protection of information against unauthorized use and modification are essential for the protection of organizational assets. At the same time, pooling of available data is necessary to allow meaningful exploitation. Point-of-care customers, specifically hospitals and pharmacists, have to worry about different kinds of vulnerabilities and threats. Due to their dependence on suppliers licensed in their area, limited budgets, and narrowly specified methods of selection of suppliers, internal and external interdependencies are the primary concern. Different countries handle their national health systems differently. For example, India's concern is strategic value of the pharmaceutical industry and availability of affordable medication for its own population, sometimes at expense of international commitments concerning intellectual property rights. Some European member states rely on price regulation and public service obligations of wholesalers to ensure steady supply of essential medicines in their specific market. Local needs have to be balanced against business interests of suppliers and reflected in organizational policies. Intellectual property rights, trademarks, and copyright issues are a concern only if the produce has the potential to harm the patient. rather than the financial loss resulting from loss of intellectual property. Over-specialization and lean operations affect hospitals the same way as any other organization, often with detrimental impact on patient casualty due to medication errors, mismanagement of recalls and expired products, and other issues. The biggest challenge for current healthcare systems is information management, from data capture to processing and sharing, as well as the ability to conduct effective surveillance and protection from data breaches. The main categories of threats to enterprises involved in supply chain security and integrity are compliance failures. This category includes breach of relevant regulations as well as violation of internal procedures and policies. Pharmaceutical industry is compliance-driven, often at the expense of awareness of other relevant vulnerabilities and threats. Other major category of threats are accidents. Incompetence, including lack of appropriate training and its validation. Corruption. Business sector competitors. Organized crime and criminal interests deserve special attention because of their role in cargo and warehouse theft and drug diversion. Supply chain can also be disrupted by civil disruption, unrest, and conflict, and severe weather and natural disasters. The last category are cyber incidents and data breaches. Incidents in the cyber world are not limited to criminal interest, but can be the result of espionage by nation, state, or business competitors, corruption and lack of enforcement, as well as ordinary accidents. Specific examples will be presented as case studies in the next chapter. Except for compliance failures, the most relevant threats are posed by criminal interest in both physical and cyber domain.